oops, and I thought it was so good. I wanted to make sure I shared it with want more people to see it. There was so I don't know if it was about 5 years ago now that I got the call out notice to stand by for rescue, and it was actually so it was Kevin Abma leading a group of his friends in a crevasse. And I was on standby, and then we found out that there had been a fatality, and and then it's like it was just it felt very tumultuous because you're sort of there as there's a part that me that's there as a leader, and there's part of me that's there as a rescuer, and then I'm also there as a friend, and just sort of trying to put myself in his shoes. And I'm sitting in a place hours away and I can't do anything. And I was surprised kind of how heavy that made me feel. And yeah, I think the outdoor community is doing better about talking about heuristic traps and kind of the psychological side of stuff, and trying to do debriefs. So I just really thought Laura's talk was really on point. Yeah, so I wanted to bring her out. Laura's been caving since she was 15, and and I wanted to say, yeah, so it's like a bit of a trigger warning, so we're talking about some heavy stuff here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can piggyback on that. So yeah, thank you for having me. And this is it's interesting because I just I've had a couple things happen that have given me a lot to reflect about, and I'm pretty active in the rescue community here in the U.S. I'm an instructor now, so I've kind of had a journey to get there, and it's been sort of interesting. And now I'm kind of like the poster child for talking about these things. But I agree. I think it's really something. I do get a lot of messages from these things afterwards, where people. I think it helps to talk about these things. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Yeah, and let's see. All right. Can y'all see that one?
Yeah, that looks good.
Cool.
Yeah.
This actually does it interesting where it gives the screen its own screen, at least on mine, so I can see everybody. But then this, anyway, sorry. It was like, wow, that's better. So yeah, kind of the title. I got asked to do this presentation for an Ohio grotto, and just kind of talking about when you find yourself unexpectedly on the wrong side of rescue things, or even like as Katie said, just even involved, even whether you're the patient, the rescuer, you're tangentially involved and you hear something about it. I've kind of had experience in all of those roles, and it's never easy. And one of the main purposes of this is just kind of to, I think there were things that I saw that I was utterly floored and unprepared for. And I had two major incidents that I'll talk about, but well, so two major incidents that I'll talk about. And when the second incident occurred, I was much more prepared to see some of the things that I saw. So I'm not an expert in this kind of stuff. I'll kind of go into that, but just a little background. Yeah, as Katie said, I started when I was 15. I was a little baby caver. My first job was a tour guide at a local cave here in southern Indiana. We have this big river and a boat. You get to drive the boat, and then in the evening, you could put a Snickers bar in your pocket and go run around this 20-mile cave system and just do whatever we wanted. We had just an unbelievable amount of freedom for teenagers, and it was a wonderful place to cut your teeth caving. A lot of them are just really in our area, just hard legendary explorers of this local area, and to see that map on the wall was just very inspiring to me. So I was very entertained running around that 20-mile cave and doing other local caves for a while, just as a rec caver, and discovering things that we didn't map, and probably, who knows, we were just having a great time. And I was finishing school and things like that. And then kind of as people started to grow up and go their separate ways, I was losing my caver group. So I started to get into grottos in earnest around here. And around 2009, I started actually doing survey work, and Binkley Cave is where I started. If anybody's familiar, it's now a 46-mile system. Sorry, I'm not metric. A 46-mile system in southern Indiana. But when we started on it, it was closer to 20. So we managed to add about 20 miles in 5 years, which was pretty epic. And this kind of caving is not technically like rope SRT stuff. It's very like wetsuit, wet, muddy. It's kind of sleazy caving. It's kind of all the stuff that people from the last generation left over for us to find and mop up. And through the modern technology of wetsuits and some of our technical digging and electrical batteries and such, we've been able to make really good progress. But during that time, I became friends with some of those people, and there was an incident in that cave that I'll go into a little bit. And then after that, I learned a lot of things, and I decided I need to take some rescue training. So OCR is our acronym for Orientation to Cave Rescue, and it's just like a little mini weekend class where you have some PowerPoints, and then you do a mock rescue the next day, and it's pretty basic, and it's more along the lines of how you would be a participant in a call-out rescue. And so we do have a National Cave Rescue Commission here in the United States, and it's not a rescue team. It's just it's a training resource. And so, you know, we have regional coordinators, and they organize and set up different trainings. We have like a national week long that moves around in different levels that kind of go up through the proficiency. But most of our week long classes here are geared towards like litter rescue. We do have another couple of specialty classes. One of them's a small party assisted rescue, SPAR. And that's basically just like going over what you and your friends would use that you normally carry in your pack to rescue somebody through a cave rather than calling out for help. So, and kind of to know when to do that and when not. So the whole, structure of rescue training here, it's relatively, I guess, I think it started catching on in here around the 80s, but I mean, it's come a long way, but we're still always growing and refining that. So, yeah, and then in the middle of that training, I experienced another incident in also that same cave, and I became an instructor. And it's funny because I think this younger version of me would have really laughed to ever think that I would have become a rescue instructor. And I think, as I said in the other presentation, we used to kind of think they were nerds and kind of be like the boogeyman, like, don't do that. The rescue people are going to come get you. They're watching you. Like, so, it was always just kind of a joke to us. And I would have never in a million years thought that I would be wearing that hat. And I'm very glad to. But it definitely wasn't something I originally set out with great aspirations to do. And yeah, but it's been a good thing. So just like Katie said, this is a trigger warning. I'm going to talk about death. And I also want to mention that I'm not a professional. What I do professionally, I'm a grant writer. I'm self-employed grant writer who does like watershed management plans. I do technical writing. I work with the ag community. I do like baseline water monitoring under bridges. So I'm not in any way, shape, or form in the psych field. And so I know some of the things I'll probably go over. Some of you, if you are doing this professionally, I apologize if it's like slightly, out of date, or if I didn't quite quote the textbook. But mostly, these are some things I've read and kind of picked up since these incidents that have resonated with me, and I've learned more. But again, it's just my personal experiences. So, if you do feel like you need to see a professional, like, please do that. I'm a Midwestern farm kid that doesn't like to admit that anything's wrong. So the fact that, like, doing this topic in general, it took me a while to get here to be able to like admit some of these things. And I'm not really, it took me a long time to arrive at some of these conclusions that maybe if I had gone to see a therapist earlier or something, I might have gotten there a little sooner than I did. But please just, go seek the help you need, and don't rely on weeknight webinars to get it done for you. But hopefully this will help you out some. Excuse me. So the first incident I experienced was in November, and it involved a really dear friend of ours. Tim McLean was a hard caver, super experienced, been caving for decades, and about the size of a jockey. So he was like our perfect model caver that we would send into all the leads, and he could help us very quickly prioritize what was worth pursuing, what wasn't. And we called him Tim the the tool, like not like in a bad way, but like, the Slim Tim tool was kind of what people jokingly called him. But he was just one of these really warm people, always upbeat, always happy, always laughing, having a great time. And he he died on the cave trip in November 2013. I think I was probably in my late 20s. But what happened was we were with a group and we were actually hauling dive tanks to an area in the cave. So for all intents and purposes, Tim and I and several others were basically kind of on light duty that day because we weren't going to be digging or surveying. We were just hauling dive tanks and on an area of cave that we were pretty familiar with and having a good time. And I took my eyes off of him for a second to probably it was closer to 30 seconds to look up ahead at some people that were pushing through like a low airspace. And when I looked back, he was just, face down in the water. And I'd grown up on a farm, of course, but I'd never seen anyone pass away. And the thing that also surprised me was they don't they don't warn you that it's not just, there's still a lot of movement and noises and stuff sometimes. And it was, for me as an untrained medical person, I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know if he had a seizure or he had choked on a cough drop or had a stroke or I had no idea what was happening. So we ended up pulling him out and pulling him aside to a gravel bank. We were kind of standing in chest deep water when this happened. And I think the most terrifying thing that sticks with me is just to go from having a really peaceful day where everybody's just gliding through the water, having a really good time, laughing, and to just in a matter of seconds, just screaming chaos and everybody splashing and dropping their gear and it's sinking to the bottom and trying to get him out of the water. And it was horrifying. And a few things happened that were really surprising to me after that incident. And I think we all knew pretty quickly that it was not gonna have a good outcome and that he was gone. But you watch your team members start to behave really different. And I think even you start to realize yourself, you're not really prepared for how you might react under that kind of thing, especially if it's somebody that you care deeply about and are really close with. So what ended up happening as we found out, and I'll kind of share some of those team dynamics and things I observed, but he had a huge heart attack. He was age 49 and there weren't really any warning signs. He had been complaining about stomach issues, but we thought it was all the horrible mountain houses we were eating on the long cave trips and then crawling afterwards because that will give anybody heartburn. But there just really wasn't any warning sign. He was in really good spirits that day. So it was an utter shock to all of us. So you have a lot of time to sit with that. We ended up doing some people left early. And one of the first surprises to me was our most medically trained individual was the first to sprint out of the cave to get help with another guy. And we didn't really even have time to decide that maybe that person should have stayed behind, or maybe they didn't want to stay behind. I don't know. And again, I'll also say, as I'm talking about these things, this is not said in a place of judgment, because I think what's important, the takeaway for all of this is just knowing that weird stuff happens and to be really forgiving with yourself and with others, because it's really hard. And even people will say and do unexpected things that they don't even have good explanations for, or even understanding why they did or said something. So our most medically trained person left the cave first. And then our trip leader, who had organized a lot of the trips and was kind of our main person, after about 30 minutes of us doing CPR, or about 30 minutes from the time of him going down to us pulling him over and doing CPR, he said, "Well, I think we all need to leave the cave now." And it shocked me because I couldn't imagine leaving our friend behind after only giving him 30 minutes. We all knew that it wasn't, we all knew it was hopeless, but at the same time, it just seemed so quick to just be like, all right, let's all leave. And so I argued to stay back, and a couple other people stayed with me, and wasn't quite ready to leave. And we were well prepared. I mean, we had prepared to sit there with divers for hours. So I argued, and I remember the trip leader looked at me and he said, "Well, don't lose your shit." I was like, "Okay." And then he just packed up his stuff and left and took everybody else out of the cave with him. And I it just shocked me that that was that. It was that quick. It just was. I wasn't prepared to leave the cave, and so um, we ended up staying back and doing CPR for what ended up being about 3 hours, a little more than 3 hours, just mostly because it was something to do and it kept us warm. And stopping means you have to admit that that it's real. And then we sat for another several hours, and then people started to arrive to package him to carry him out of the cave. And I exited the cave with a few other people. And one of the things I shared that really surprised me was that I was extremely angry at everything. I remember wanting to kick formations in half, which is really weird, and cavers don't usually think like that. But I just remember wanting to be destructive and just all. I mean, I was just enraged. I was so upset. And the interesting thing was, as you're leaving the cave, now you're starting to see people coming into the cave to do the body recovery, and some of them are friends, and it's just so sad to see them. But the other thing is, started to become very critical of the rescue operation because I didn't understand any of it. And they were bringing phones into the cave. And I remember thinking how stupid that seemed, especially in a deep water cave where you have to climb up on the mud bank and not get electrocuted by the phone. And then you start seeing other people in the cave and you're like, what is that person doing here? They haven't been caving for so many years. Or what about this? Why are there so many people in here? Why don't they just let the cavers handle it? Come on, we don't need all these people. What is this? And you get out and you're on the surface, and there's all these people. You left with just a small group, and now there's 150 people up in this area where you've been, doing your quiet caving. And there's police up there, and they're asking you questions. They're asking about suspicious activity and weird boxes. I mean, they're reading it right off of paper, but that's part of what they have to do is they ask for whether or not there's any suspicious circumstances. I mean, I guess technically it was our word. We're the ones that came out of the cave with the story, so they're just they're kind of doing some light interviewing, which seemed kind of intimidating. And then they want to infantilize you and treat you like a baby and, act like you didn't just come out of this cave for however many hours, like you need a Band-Aid for your boo-boo. It was very stay away from me, And then a little minister came by, a little 80-year-old minister with his little collar, came by at 2 a.m. with a Bible, asking people if they wanted to pray. And I'm not very religious, and that was also very strange to me that that he would be there out in the middle of this cornfield, basically asking, administering religious help. And it just all was a very strange thing. And I was it was really really put off by a lot of it. And so afterwards, you have the funeral and you have the wake. And we did have somebody from our group blog about it within 48 hours. And that was kind of, not to everybody's liking. And there was a lot of chatter on Facebook about this body recovery, and a lot of people found out that our friend Tim died on Facebook. And the rescue weirdly got mobilized in 2 places. One of them was 5 hours away, and one of them was, locally. So there was a lot of people trying to do carpooling, and people that had basic rescue training, college students that were I need to borrow a wetsuit. It's if wetsuit's not part of your normal gear, this one's probably not for you, And so it was just kind of it was a lot. It was kind of a cluster, it seemed like. And I ruminated on a lot, and I had a lot of negative feelings about it for a long time. And then to top it off, we had our grotto meeting. There was a debrief. And, we had one of our national rescue coordinators come into our, who lives locally in Indiana, actually he did at the time, but he came into our grotto meeting and gave a play-by-play of everything that happened. And as he was explaining, he said, well, we had one confirmed fatality and we had 3 patients still in the cave. And that I realized that I was a patient, and that pissed me off really bad because I thought I was very much in control of the situation. And I didn't understand that they hadn't had any communication from us for like 5 or 6, 7 hours. So they didn't know what kind of state we were in, and they didn't know if we were hypothermic or, emotionally distraught or wandering around the cave aimless and lost. They didn't know. So, to understand that for at least a time period, my name was listed on some whiteboard or sheet as a patient or as somebody who was a complication to the rescue, just really like it just blew my mind because I didn't feel like I was a liability, but I guess that was how they were approaching it and their planning. And I ruminate a lot about these things, and one of the things in life I've kind of realized, like, if I'm really critical about something, I think it's my responsibility to learn more about the thing before I can dismiss it entirely, So I think they call in the corporate world a beach ball problem, where everybody can only see their stripe of the beach ball, right? So cavers can only see the caving, the agency folks can only see a certain part of it, management, all these different things. So if you can only see one stripe of the beach ball and all the other ones look stupid, it's kind of it's not a bad idea to get more information and kind of understand that. It's the same in corporate, finance cares about finance, promotions, these kind of things. They only see their own personal goals and everything. So that experience was just a lot. And I'll kind of jump to the next slide. But some of the major takeaways I had, especially the unexpected shifts in leadership and team dynamics. So it's interesting because I think I was 27 or 28, and I felt like I grew up in about a minute. Like I felt like it's a weird feeling to feel like when you've been a young person and you're in the chain of leadership, you're like not really in charge of things, to look around at all of your peers and realize that all the decisions now are collective and you can't just wait for somebody to tell you what to do. Like you all kind of, somebody needs to act, somebody needs to do. And in our case, like I said, our medical person left first, and then our second leader kind of bounced, and we were just kind of all up in, all scattered on who was even in charge. It was just sort of like in every person was kind of like doing their own thing. So the abdication of responsibility is another thing that like leaders can do if they become too overwhelmed, or even individuals if they get like decision fatigue and they're just done. They're just checked out. They may stop supporting team goals, or they may stop taking care of themselves. And I've definitely seen that happen in both of the incidents. And definitely the good idea, bad idea fairy. I'll talk about that a little bit more in the second incident. But there's a lot of pressure to do something. So there's like, it almost seems like there's two opposite sides of the spectrum. Either it seems like people will abdicate responsibility and not want to make any decisions, or they're just filled with a million good and bad ideas that they're trying to implement very quickly in an effort to bring some control back to the situation. Guilt and blame and doubt, we all know that. Especially the doubt one is also when you watch somebody who's in really fit shape pass away right in front of you suddenly, it definitely makes a lot of people in your team start to question things, doubt things, doubt your own abilities. We had a lot of people that kind of as a result of this, our project team really shifted, and some people left caving entirely. Some people took an extended break. Some people continued to try to cave and had a lot of issues with anxiety and panic. And some of them almost, I felt, took like a daredevil approach. Like also, I think when you watch somebody die suddenly, you think, wow, I have to get as much caving in as humanly possible in the limited time I have on Earth. And some people, I think, seem to almost take more risks. I think to kind of, like have that sort of carpe diem feeling. So it's real interesting. It was kind of all over the place with observing other teammates and other people. Violation of privacy is a huge thing. I'll talk about that one a little bit on the second one, but just feeling like having your friend who died and being like a news article or a debrief or just that kind of thing just feels so unfair. It just feels like it's without reverence. It just feels very cheap. And of course it feels incredibly selfish to talk about this kind of stuff when somebody died, but in general, I mean, if you're even the survivors carry around a lot of that guilt and that feeling of that people have just look at them differently and judge them, or are in their business. You get weird nosy questions sometimes that are unwelcome. Another thing that I think really I didn't understand at the time, but I do now. Excuse me. A lot of times you'll have people that show up on a rescue and you'll wonder, why are they here? They're not really trained, or they're not really up for the challenge, or something like that. And a lot of times you have people who hear about it online who are emotionally attached to the situation, and they just show up. And to a large degree, at least around here, the management just tries to fold them in as much as possible. And so, at least where I live, we are not so remote that we don't have. Actually, our problem is like the opposite that you all might have in some areas out west and like in Canada. We actually have to really make sure that the media doesn't find out about it too soon. And our problem is actually like keeping too many people from showing up too quickly, because our caves we have like a high cave density and a lot of people. So it doesn't take very long for it to get on Facebook, and like Good Morning America will hear about it. And so we try to a large degree. We don't really have rescue teams in this local area, we work with the local agencies having jurisdiction, and then they call on us a specialist. But we really try to keep this stuff under a lid so it doesn't blow up too big and people don't find out somebody died on Facebook. But definitely you'll just have people that show up, and sometimes they're really helpful and you're like glad that they showed up, and sometimes they're obstinate and they have their own ideas that are counter to what the management is trying to implement. And sometimes they'll just go in the cave and do whatever they want, and almost combative about wanting to help. And so, rather than having that happen, usually the management will try to find tasks and roles for them. Or sometimes if you're at a house with another caver and that caver is a rescue caver and they get a call, like, are you going to sit on the couch while they go jump in the car and go to the rescue? No, you're going to come with them, right? So a lot of times the caver who gets called will sometimes pick up people along the way just because they're in the close vicinity to when the call is received. So occasionally you get a handful of people that are just like, kind of like, okay, well, now they're here. So that happens, and that can happen. Codependence, that kind of stuff. Just not wanting to make any decisions, kind of have the fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Codependence kind of goes with fawn, where they just want to attach themselves to another decision maker and do whatever they tell them, whether it's like good for their health or not. And that kind of codependence is attractive if you're getting decision fatigue and you don't really want to make those hard calls anymore. But it's also kind of, can be detrimental too. I guess in that scenario, I was the fight person. I was ready to like stay with it till the end and hunker down. But definitely I saw some flight, and I saw some freeze and analysis paralysis, that kind of thing. So it's interesting, and I think you don't really know how you're going to act until you're put in that position. So I am not real critical when I hear about things. There's definitely been cases of people I've heard, of sabotaging their own cave gear so they didn't have to go in the cave to deal with a body recovery or something. So, you just never know how it's going to be quite on game day. Noise sensitivity, auditory hallucinations, things like that. Especially in caves are kind of weird anyways. I always felt like it sounded like water was like, it sounds like conversations and stuff. So when you're in a high stress environment, it can start to really play with you. I've definitely I've had some flood situations, and I've definitely like convinced myself that I heard like a waterfall or something, like quickening its flow, only to get out and find that the grass was really dry outside. I was just like, oh wow, cool, all in my head. Yeah. So that can happen sometimes too if you get in your own head enough. a lot of these subjective memories. I mean, we all know memory is a subjective thing, and I remember like it's natural when people after an incident, they compare notes and say, well, this is what happened, this is what happened. They'll have different versions, very different sometimes, and you wonder why they would lie about a thing. And we even had, I remember in one case, a friend kept arguing with me about whether a certain part of the cave was sumped or not in this flood rescue I'm going to talk about. And I was like, hey, I was actually there and I can tell you it was sumped. And he's like, no, it wasn't. I'm like, I was in there. Like, it was just like, it was so like in his mind that it was that way was open. And it was just strange. You're just like, okay, I don't know. Cause you almost get like imprinted or something. It's such a strong, powerful memory time of, just latching onto things, and everybody sort of creates their own version. And, I suppose this is the one I'm sharing with you is mine, but it is very subjective. And I think that's the other thing, is to just understand that like nobody's lying. They're just telling you their version of the truth. And they feel very strongly about it. They're emotionally attached to it. So it's just, it's just one of those things. It's why one of the things why they try to get as much detail as possible right at the incident, which seems super invasive. You're like, why can't you ask me this tomorrow? And it is because there's a lot of this kind of stuff, especially that happens during stressful situations. So um, I took rescue training. So yeah, like I said, after I found out I was the patient in a rescue, I started taking training. And what I found there was, and this is like, yay, rescue training, cheerleader. But really, like, it was really interesting to me because I went into like my level 1 week long with a lot of baggage that I unpacked during that week. And I didn't really know I was going to do it. And luckily, I was in a class with a lot of like super experienced, kind people who were very understanding of the things I was going through. I was very stressed out because I hadn't had a lot of SRT experience, or actually, I'll amend this. I had a lot of SRT experience. I kind of like, been trained in the wild. And so when I started taking NCRC classes, like I did not have a concept of what a changeover was. Or like I had some other real bad habits I had done to learn. I didn't really operate a brake bar rack with. I was instructed never to touch it with my left hand because you might get your fingers crushed. So I operated a rack for like 10 years without touching it. So there's that. Yeah. So anyways, I had a lot of like things that came at me pretty fast as I got into training that I had to like get up to speed on and get up to a level. And I felt real proud of myself, and I passed all my checkoffs. And the first day we're doing, haul systems, and we're hanging a live person off of a cliff, with ropes attached to them. And I was just like, oh my God, we're actually doing it. Oh my God, there's a person over a cliff. Oh my God. And it freaked me out. But what I learned too was like, what actually freaks me out is not myself being in danger. I think after that incident, I was very like on edge about other people being in danger, or especially like hearing noises like out of my line of sight that I couldn't see or figure out what was going on with those, or just like hearing scraping noises over a cliff where you can't see like what's happening over the edge is like, like I didn't like it. So I was mostly keeping it together, but like I think some of the fellow classmates knew I was going through some stuff. So I think the great thing about rescue training, and it's important to, whatever the training is, whether it's like litter rescue or small party or whatever, I think it's important to engage in these kind of trainings, because for me, it introduced me to a world of people, like a wonderful network of skilled, trained people, but also people that were really understanding what was going on for the most part, and very, very sensitive. There's a lot of people that have been through stuff, much worse than that, and can relate, can understand, can be somebody you can talk to about those things. And it's just nice to feel like you're not the only, like there's other people in the room that have been through stuff, and they're coping and they're functioning and they're doing awesome shit. And like it felt really good. And so there's always, like, I think with any of these rescue trainings or any of these trainings, there's always like little micro arguments on whether you should tie this knot or that knot with that thing. But ultimately, just being around, getting that training helped me with my confidence too, because I reasoned with myself. I didn't want to take more levels. And one of the older cavers in my area said, "You're an active caver in an area. You know a lot of caves. You know a lot of you know the maps. You know the routes. Like whether you're on the list or not, like you're going to get called because you're an active caver in this area. So even if you don't take training, you're going to get called probably. So like, wouldn't you like to be prepared if you do get called?" And I reason that I'd like to do that, even though I didn't really want to ever do a rescue again. I just wanted to learn cool rigging and meet cool people and travel around and go caving in different states. And to a large degree, it's been that. But it really helped boost my confidence and kind of helped me feel like I was never going to feel that that helpless again. And in the case with our friend and his heart attack, like if he had had that heart attack at the hospital, they said he was it was not the kind that could have been resuscitated or anything. But still, just having that feeling of just like, what do I do? 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 Like having something in there. So even if you're not successful, you at least have ideas. You can at least step into a really gnarly situation and start to like work the problem in your head and have actual ideas in there. Really helps you walk into something like that with a lot of confidence. So yeah, rescue training is really helped me get through a lot of this, like more than anything else. So then I'd had a couple of week-long trainings. So we do like level 1, 2, 3, and then we have like some extra bonus classes through the National Cave Rescue Commission, and then you can become an instructor and all this. But I was like kind of in the middle of training, and I'd seen some management. I'd done some stuff like that. And myself and 6 other people got flooded into a cave, and it was a weird situation. It was in December. And so like, I don't know where the weather's like where you are, but like we had one of these weird, like December's supposed to be cold here, right? And we had this weird warm day, and then we had like, it was like precipitation that was supposed to come in as snow after midnight, or sleet actually. And we were all trying to kind of get out of the cave before it got too late and slick. And we were in the cave maybe 3 or 4 hours, and we were all negotiating this crawlway called the D&B crawl, which stands for Dick and Ball crawl. And I was kind of in the back, kind of having to dig out gravel. It was low and wide, and some people had gone ahead. There was a little like, divot, a little bathtub. And so our team was real strung out in this. We lost, our kind of separated into 2 groups as you do. And I was in a bathtub. I was actually, I was bringing in a newer caver who wanted to kind of do some project work. Well, it was a little nervous, and it was kind of weird. This person had actually had a bad flooding incident like a couple years before. So this was the trip. This person was going to come in. We were going to build this person's confidence back up. Be like, it's okay, we got you. And then we had this horrible flood. And I remember at one point, I looked down at this person after we knew we were stuck in the cave overnight at least. And I said, I bet you really hate me now. And they looked at me and they just nodded like this. I was like, oh, wow, this is going to be really great. But when all the water started to come up, it was in a crawl, and I was in a bathtub, and one of the other cavers said, hey, I think this water looks like foamy or something. I thought, well, it's just people displacing it. And the person was watching me go through this bathtub, and they said, I don't want to do it. I said, okay, well, I thought this could happen. So me and this other person will leave the cave, and y'all can continue on to survey. And then I look over at the gravel bar, and I can see the water starting to back up on it. And I was like, oh, wow, no, he's right. It actually is, it's coming in. So, panic, calling everybody back. And by that time, the water was really obvious that it was closing up the bathtub. And I think like at least 2 people had to hold their breath and come through, like 20 feet or something. It was pretty bad. And it was bad because, this low flat stream, and now we've kind of lost our crawl path because there's water on it all. So one person crawled into a pinch point. It was really scary, and the water was coming up, and they had to back out. It was really terrifying. And we all get out of that, and we're just like, what the hell? Like, that was crazy. We're in this 46-mile cave. The bottom's big river borehole, and we're kind of in this like middle level. We're not even in the dry paleo, but we're like, well, that was weird, man. Well, it must have just like, maybe it just came through. It just looked really bad in that area, just a little just flashed through, probably hit the main river and it did nothing, right? It takes a lot to raise that main river. And when we all went in, we had a consensus. There was like less than a quarter inch of rain coming in. Like that doesn't touch the river. Like we've gone in there plenty of times. And, people say, and I don't know what it's like where y'all cave, but if we didn't go caving, if we waited for 0% chance of rain to go caving, we'd probably not go caving but once or twice a year maybe. So we do take calculated risks, and I mean I think our group had probably like 200 years of caving experience in it, at least 150. So I mean we were not we were seasoned. What ended up happening was a 4 inches of rain, 4 inches, which is a lot for around here. It just came in instead of sleet. It came in early, unexpected, huge dump in like 4 inches in like, I don't know, like less than an hour. It was crazy. So really, really insane. And then more sleet coming in later, weather dropping all the time. But we kind of recollected ourselves, and as we were going out to the main river, we could just hear like the cave pressurized. You could hear like in parallel passages where you knew there was like little waterfalls or formations. It was just like reverberating, just like just rumbling, scary. You could see like water was like little trickles were now like blasting like sideways out of the cave walls. It was like weird. So some of us started to really figure that we probably weren't gonna get to Waffle House that night, or whatever 24-hour shithole you have in your town. But we got down to the main river, and now it was, not just like ankle deep or something, or knee deep. It was like up to our tallest guy's neck, and it was turbulent. You could hear rocks kind of like rolling around and grinding, and it was just like ledges, water whipping around under them. It was scary, So we stayed overnight, woke up, and the water hadn't really gone down. You make some like lines in the mud to see, and you just, some people just go right to bed and they just don't want to think about it. And some people are like obsessively checking those lines like every 20 minutes, and you're trying to stay warm. Our caves are 54 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're all wet. We're all in wetsuits, getting diaper rash and, sitting around. And it was just, it just changes everything. It just puts a pall on everything. And you start to see people kind of separate into their little sort of like buddies, and we all managed to stay warm and did a lot of snuggling and things like that in our trash bags. Learned a lot about optimizing emergency gear and things like that. Those little tea lights are, those aren't anything. I like to carry the $2 candle now and really spoil myself, but we went on an exploratory like mission in the morning. There was just so much, again, that oops, where is it? That good idea, bad idea fairy. Just like, it's interesting, like I said, it just keeps, what if we did this? What if we did this? What if we did this? And it's a lot of really dangerous ideas get floated around, like scary ones. What if we swam through the sump and I tied webbing to you, and then you held your breath and I pulled you through on this webbing and pulled you through this like submerged passage? I'm like, why would we do that? There's people that we just have to wait. Like, we've only missed dinner or something. Like, chill out. Like, people, it's gonna be fine, So for me, in my perspective, which was probably very annoying to everybody else, I already been through a trip where somebody died. So to me, like, spending the night in the cave, even 2 nights, didn't seem like terrible. What I was more worried about was knowing that everybody on the surface was freaking out, because they don't know there's 7 people in this area that's, pretty well known. Our 46-mile system is attached to a commercial cave. They give tours in part of it. So like, that's, it's got some attention, it's in a pretty populated area. So there's just, everybody's kind of on their own wavelength. Some people are kind of withdrawing from the group. Some people are, really, really just not taking good care of themselves and we had at least one that was requiring like constant attention to keep them warm, to kind of help them get up and move, play Simon Says, eat things. If we, just really just not taking care of themselves. I mean, just lapsing into hypothermia and having to wake them up and get them all, like heated again. It was, everybody was kind of all over the place. It was interesting, but we did do in the morning, we went and kind of checked downstream because some people just couldn't be convinced that we couldn't exit. And you start to get strung out in the water, and tallest people are up ahead or short people are grabbing rocks, get washed away, you lose voice contact. And one person from our party actually got washed around a corner and disappeared, just upstream of a sump. And they clawed their way back, and it was horrible. And the morale went way down. I mean, we had such a it was so costly for us to do that, to go downstream and look around, and you start to doubt the passages, and now there's water coming out of the ceiling in weird places you don't remember. Really simple stuff, because we were trying to go out a different way than we came in, and it was just bad. We had to go back, and people were pissed. We had like a little bit of like a little family argument about going back to our little place we had been from, because people are so focused, they wanted to get out. And at one point I talked to another person who was had been in charge, or was one of the experienced cavers, and they said, do you really think there's people there? And I said, like, yeah, they're working the problem, and to me, my question was, if we've had 4 inches of unforecasted rain, like, I don't know that the world's not coming to an end or something. Like, that's just weird. So if we wait until people come to us, then we'll at least know which route is optimal to exit. We'll at least know when it's safe to exit. Like, maybe they're not here because there's more weird weather. I don't know, but I have so much trust from the rescue training to rely on them to, be making informed decisions when we had no info. So it's very interesting. I think once you've also had that rescue training and you've seen those stripes of the beach ball, you can have like a lot better trust and understanding of how that's all unfolding up top without feeling like you're just left, to make your own decisions. So I think we ended up being in there for about 40 hours. And, we walked out on our own, but people did come in to assist, and we needed assistance. One guy had lost a boot. Like I said, we had one person that was really like pretty hypothermic and just, not doing real great. So just having the morale boost, the water was super high and still really fast. So it was nice to have the support. And, yeah, I think the people that, like, as Katie said, being the responder, being the rescuer, being the person waiting for instructions is so much harder than being the person in the cave in a lot of ways. And what's interesting that I noticed with some of my friends, especially a couple, it was like almost like they were dealing with the aftermath of grief, but like we hadn't died, but it's like they had already mentally prepared themselves to be grieving for us. And I had somebody that I've known for a long time, like, confess romantic feelings to me. Like, I was just like, oh, no, I'm alive. Let's not do that. No, that's good. We're all good. Everything's fine. Let's go back to our normal lives. Weird. So, but it's just like, it just puts this weird, emotions are so high and like kind of unpredictable. One of the main things was, that extreme invasion of privacy. We had a couple people that didn't want a debrief to happen because they felt like that wasn't a story that needed to be shared widely. But I do believe when we have the rescue community respond, that it is something that we all benefit from. We have an American Caving Accidents publication that comes out every couple of years. I think it's open to anybody. But like, we learn a lot when we share those things, and it makes our community more knowledgeable and richer, So I think debriefs are good. I mean, you don't want to tell all that to the news and everything like that. But I had a lot of really negative experiences with the media, taking pictures off of my social media, calling my places of work. Like, they were in vans, like driving into people's houses at 7 in the morning. It was really crazy. But if you just wait them out for like 72 hours, they do not care about you anymore. You just have to stay strong and wait them out. But there was like helicopters flying around, and I mean, it was pretty big news for a minute. And it got on Facebook. Somebody's older relative was sharing it for, to share prayers and likes and things like that for us, because they were really concerned. And it started to go lightly viral. And like, there was like a hashtag and stuff for a little while. It was it's embarrassing. So I mean, you have no control over that kind of stuff when you're in the cave. And it's hard to tell people not to do that kind of thing, but as much as possible, like, we try to keep that under wraps for sure. But the abdication of responsibility, the good idea, bad idea fairy, the violation of privacy, that a lot of that stuff is definitely like pretty prevalent there. But some of the things afterwards, and I know I'm probably getting close to time, so I'll start winding it down here. But One of the things I didn't know was a thing until I knew it was a thing that I've struggled with is hypervigilance. And just being constantly aware of everything and just trying to like stay 2 steps ahead, 10 steps ahead, like strategizing and just being like not being able to shut your brain off, just always being like looking for solutions, even the things that don't really need solutions. And especially like the seeking control as a form of self-protection. And so it became obvious to me that this was sort of becoming a negative in like my work life and my personal life, with my relationships. And I've always been a little bit of a proactive type A kind of person, but I was wanting to control everything. And it wasn't because I was seeking like power or, credit for anything. It's because I never wanted to be surprised in a negative way ever again. When you are surprised and caught totally off guard by somebody just dropping dead in front of you, you will do anything in your power to make sure that like you will never be surprised by something like that again. Just like pestering people about their health and their checkups and just trying to pre-plan everything in the cave and just being like really OCD and overthinking. It's to a point it's not good. And I was sharing with somebody. I had an epiphany moment at one of the cave rescue trainings. I don't know if anybody in here knows Don Paquette, but he's he's probably in his 70s. He's like one of our OG rescue guys. But Don's from my area, and he's kind of an old military dude. He's very like, psh. But I had a bad day at training. I had all these really great ideas, like, and nobody would listen to my good ideas, and I could tell at some point that they were kind of just like, okay, all right, go over there and like, coil up some rope or something. I was getting these like little, sort of little baby tasks, and it was irritating me a little bit. But I had all these good ideas. I couldn't understand like why they wouldn't want to put me in charge of like planning and strategizing. And I ended up talking to this instructor about it. He said, "Well, tell me what's happening." I told him, and he said, "Well, you're smart." I said, "Oh, okay, thank you." He said, "You're thinking 10, 20 steps ahead." I said, "Oh, thank you." He goes, "It's not a compliment." I couldn't. I was like, he's like, "You're driving yourself and everybody around you crazy. Just think about the three most likely things that can happen and just trust yourself and the team that y'all have enough knowledge and gear here that if something really weird happens, you'll figure it out. But just pick three and the most likely things and then move on. Just that's you don't need to be that far ahead of things." And it just, yeah, I just realized how badly I'd been doing that in other areas of my life. Staying busy all the time so you can avoid addressing issues or thinking. If you're always looking one step ahead, if you're always filling your calendar, you never have to slow down and have like thoughts. I love hiking. I do not like camping by myself because I don't have a buddy to talk to. And I like solitude to a degree, but I usually have to have some sort of like book or something like keeping my brain busy because it's really something I found as sort of like I didn't really realize I was doing it, but I was doing it. So keeping your brain busy and your schedule busy, it's good to do, but and for a lot of people, it's a great coping mechanism, but you don't want it to become the master of, you don't want it to master you. Yeah, that overthinking is a big one. I'm always kind of like keyed up for that kind of stuff, but it does get worse if you've been through something. I've noticed. Intrusive thoughts, lost confidence, emotional dysregulation. I've noticed in other people where they'll get really mad about something that's like, you're like, oh, like that's not anything to get that mad about. Or they kind of feel like they're constantly under attack or that everybody's out to get them or things like that. They can kind of have sort of a disproportionate reaction to those kind of things. Sometimes that can be oversharing, trauma dumping. I guess that's what I'm doing now. But even before I was, I guess, being asked to do talks on it, I would definitely like say weird things at weird times, and people would be like, "Oh, okay, well that's weird," and you'd be like, I wonder why I said that out loud. Oh well, sorry. Uh, disassociation and avoidance. We definitely had some cavers that just, suddenly got really interested in a new hobby and they were gone, and that's okay. Like, you got to do what you got to do for your health, but it is kind of sad to see. I haven't dealt with it too much myself, but definitely like panic attacks. I've seen other people have those in cave, and not really know what they were at the time. some self-sabotage and things like that. You definitely want to make sure that that's not mastering you either, the substances, all in moderation, right? But I guess mostly like how to help yourself or others. And I think this kind of applies sort of all over the place, right? Whether you're the rescuer, you're the person wringing your hands on the surface, you're the patient, you're the teammate, you're the friend. Ultimately, be patient and be forgiving with yourself and everyone else, because this kind of a stressful situation, it's so strange. And I think it's different when you have these kind of incidents, and I'm sure this is like no revelation to people who study this as like part of their line of work or study. But I had a friend who had a coworker have a heart attack. They did CPR. 15 minutes later, the ambulance came, and all the decision making, my friend it was done, and somebody else is at the hospital. But when something like this happens and you have to sit in the stress in a wilderness area for like 10, 15, 20, 40 hours, like you have so much time to just go through this weird evolution of like just stress adaptation. I mean, just to sit in a stressful situation for so long with no escape, without being able to like delegate it to somebody else, or to have somebody come tap you on the shoulder, be like, it's okay, we'll take it over from here. Move, you're done now. You did a good job. Like, you just don't have that. You don't have that. You just have to sit in it. And that's just it's just really, really, really hard to be in that kind of a situation. So I think, finding ways to build up your confidence, the training really helped. And especially, I think if you are called to respond, to be really honest. I've debated on like, I've done rescue stints. I haven't had to do one for somebody I'm really close with. And of course, I hope that never happens, but it might. And I don't know, when that day comes, I may want to be on the surface. I may want to be in a different role than being underground and hands-on. So I don't know, but I think it's important to be real with yourself as you assess that, and whether or not you're too close to the situation, or if you can do that. And if not, there's likely, often, depending, somebody else that can probably help with that. So get involved in your community and other things, but don't overextend yourself. Don't wear yourself down to nothing, as you're trying to stay ahead of it. Like, definitely leave time and space to kind of, be comfortable in your own headspace, to the point that you're not trying to hide from it. And of course, go see a professional if that's what it takes. But especially like with your friends, I think somebody in the last thing mentioned 3 days, 3 weeks, and 3 months is kind of the benchmarks for good check-in time. And if you talk to somebody the day of or the day after, like, they're probably just trying to sleep, shower, and become a human again. So, wait a couple of days so they can be a human and, kind of decompress. But it also takes a while too. 3 months, you're still decompressing and working through feelings. It's been like 10 years, and it just took me like about 10 years to be able to talk about my friend that passed without being like really upset about it. So sometimes it hits you wrong on the wrong day, but it's definitely, it takes a long time. And I've always thought of it kind of like tree roots growing around a rock or something. Like, the rock doesn't go away. It doesn't disappear. You just kind of like figure out how to, get around it and move on. But it's hard. So definitely follow up, and there's really no time limit on that. People will be affected by that thing forever, whether they realize it or not. I don't think you can go through something like that and not be different on the other side of it. So I had somebody ask me not too long ago, he's like, well, do you think you're like as hard ass as you used to be? Or, and I was like, no. Like, no, I don't think I am. Like, yeah, I'm a different person than I was the person that came out of that cave was different than the person that went in. Like, I know that. And so I'm a little bit more risk averse in some ways, but more about watching other people do sketchy things. It's I'm not trying to like live through that again. That was once was enough for me. So the fact that I'm still caving and doing that is like, I'm just like, yeah, that's great. I'm doing good. Like, that's enough for me. I still get to have a lot of fun underground, but I'm not trying to like push the boundaries of, life and death. And that's not really my thing. So, So yeah, it's kind of interesting. Debriefing is important, but definitely be very mindful about how like need to know basis on different crowds, and even the media needs to know stuff, but not the stuff that cavers need to know. And just and also if agencies and other groups need to understand, a lot of agencies we work with really closely here, and I know cavers rescue cavers, but also like I think it's important to remember that folks on the surface lend us their funds and their liability coverage and their equipment, and they have the ability to keep looky-loos off site and kind of manage some of that chaos, and we're very thankful for them. We train with a lot of them, but they know that they're not comfortable in that environment, and they have very little understanding of how we carry out things underground sometimes. So it's really good to share that with them and build those relationships to kind of like invest for the future so that we can work more smoothly with those surface groups and local agencies. Gallows humor is something that's still hard for me and other people I know. Like, I hear people like, one of the things I've heard repeatedly, but it hit me really hard. Like when somebody was like, making a fan comment about how it's stupid to give CPR if you don't have a cell phone signal, and why would anybody be an idiot and do that? And I was just like, okay, and just making like generalizations like that, just like being aware about who's in the room and stuff. And a lot of like gallows humor is like a coping mechanism for a lot of people, especially folks that work in that kind of industry. And I get it, but it's like I don't really like it. So and I've definitely like comforted people who have fallen apart over here in a joke land at the wrong time that they weren't ready for. So just that's something especially to be really cognizant about. And definitely like encouraging healthy coping mechanisms. If somebody's got a tendency to maybe go down the dark path and abuse substances, like maybe don't meet in a bar, maybe go for like a nice sunny hike or something, or a nice little cave trip or something like that. So just help your friends out of their dark places, and just keep an eye on them, because it definitely takes a while to get over some of the stuff, if you ever do. We have all kinds of training in our area, all these acronyms, but like I said, we have some of these classes, either like weekend ones where there's no skills requirement, to ones that require proficiency in SRT. There are some online classes, I guess. Oh, I forgot to add the one Roger Mortimer had. There's like a psychological first aid online class I hadn't realized existed. Stop the Bleed is a really good free online class. Wilderness first responder, those kind of things help you anywhere. So definitely something I recommend, because if you want to be like really well-adjusted human like me and do all this training and totally be unaffected by all this, it's interesting. Yeah, like I'm glad to have done this training. It's done a lot of good for me, but it's it never quite is a 100% fix. But I think it's just important to talk about these things and acknowledge that they exist. And it's we can't control everything, so you just have to be prepared to kind of that these things happen. Like we're all cavers, like we know the risks that we take and what could possibly happen, but now we might pack a little differently, or at least be prepared to recognize some of those things if they happen, and be prepared to adapt, especially in a weird, stressful situation, to some of those changing dynamics that can happen underground. But yeah, I think that's about it. So I appreciate y'all listening. If you have any questions, I'm into it. If I've talked too long, it's okay. Y'all can email me too. I'm happy to answer questions via email. I was like, applause.
Yeah, I didn't know we had that feature. Oh, your story.
Ooh.
You start out. I'll share this. This one's one of Chaz's stories, who was one of kind of a bunch of our mentors. But so he was caught. I think 12 of them were caught in a flood in the UK in the 60s, and the cops went to his parents' house and told him that he was stuck in a cave and he was probably dead.
Oh my.
And they survived, but it was just like, wow, that was so inappropriate back in the 60s.
Why? Oh my gosh. We just actually had an older gentleman ridge walking, and I knew it was a caver when I heard in the news, because they were like, ridge walker airlifted. I'm like, oh man, that's an old caver. Like we know who that was because that term is just so like. But I guess when they called the family, they said we found your dad. He's in the river. And it was like winter, and they thought, oh my God, he's dead. He was next to the river, but he like wasn't in the river. I was like, why would you tell somebody he was in the river? Like one little word difference, but it's just yeah, it's so crazy. We've gotten a lot better about I know there was a big rescue we had over New Year's in Fisher Ridge, and a lot of people were like, well, we didn't know about it. And we're like, yeah, we were really quiet about it. Yes. So, but some people feel left out, they're like, well, how come I didn't know about it? And it's like, well, there's a lot of, it helps with it helps manage the situation if you can, kind of keep that contained. And what's really interesting, I realize now, like with our flood situation, I talked to them later on because I was professionally curious about the management tent that I couldn't see because I was underground. But they were like, yeah, I mean, like it's in bullseyes, right? So like 30 minutes away, 1 hour away, 4 hours away, 8 hours away. I mean, they have several days of operational stuff planned out. They had divers on standby in case it was a 7-person body recovery. Like all of that stuff was planned. And when you're just a caver that responds, it may look like a shit show to you, but there's a lot of organization, a very quiet organization going on that I was like super surprised to see that iceberg, like when you take training, you're like, oh wow, like that, like when phones are in caves, they actually really matter. Like sometimes they're really important, when they're sometimes crucial to a rescue and these kind of things. So it's like, if you don't know, it's, whether you want to do the small party stuff or the litter rescue, I think it's good to just get familiar with the way decisions are being made so you can kind of understand them, not be like, that's stupid, why are you doing that? Like there's sometimes there may be stupid things that are happening, but but there's really a lot of, I guess, nuanced decision making that I had no concept about at all. So
I was sort of thinking about it like so now I've been flooded into a cave once for 4 days, and I've been swept away in a river twice, and I've been in a flash flood situation twice in a cave. So I was like, oh yeah, like I'm glad I've done the swift water training, but at the same time, it's
yes.
also like it gave me more confidence in the water, which like it sort of seems like a bad thing because like, oh no, I can swim this, no problem.
No, but I think it's good to know limits. And I think now, like even just knowing with training and stuff, like you've gotten people out of like pretend scenarios and some gnarly, and you're like, oh well, okay, yeah, like I can now envision that. Like I can now think about places and caves that I've previously thought would be impossible. I don't see them as impossible anymore. Hard, yes, and there are some truly impossible places, but some of the ones that people are like, oh, well, you're gonna die back here anyway, so fuck it. It's like, no. I think we can. I don't think it's like that. I think there's some solutions. So, but yeah, like I did talk to Zeb last week. I was like, oh, we're gonna talk to Katie's going to tell all your secrets when you guys were trapped in the cave.
So he was actually trapped in a different cave, same flood event,
that's right.
2 different
Same
caves.
Flood event. Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. That's
okay.
Yeah, we bonded over that. But it's oh, sorry, go ahead.
So Clinton says, really appreciate the share. I'm a ground search and rescue, and even when things work out, I can have 1,000 doubt fairies and could have, should have after the facts running through my mind.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's the worst too, is afterwards and you're like, I don't know if anybody's a board gamer, but we call it min-maxing in games where you're trying to get like the best possible score ever. And I used to be really bad about that. Now I've kind of just like, hey, it's like not good job, it's just job, it's done. It's just like job, like we did it, it all worked out, it was safe. But it's good to always constantly be thinking about ways you could do better. You'll never have your A team show up at a rescue. You'll never have everybody on their A game. You'll never have all the equipment you need. You just won't, So it's really good to know how to kind of think on your feet and adapt. And I do remember it was funny coming out of the flood cave. Immediately when I got out, one of the things I kind of said, I got into the bathroom and they had a trailer, and I was like, I mean, I'm sorry, like we're all cavers. I've been like holding it in for a couple days, you know, and I was ready. And there were people everywhere. There was no privacy, none. They just was like, here you go, here's your family. Hey, everybody's out of the cave. And I was like, is that bathroom operational? And they were like, no, it's broken. I'm like, oh, and I didn't know. The farmer was like letting people into the bathroom, and they're like, oh, why didn't you say so? I'm just like, so one of the things too, if you're in the rescue, like before you like introduce your persons back into the world, like give them like 5 minutes off to the side to like be a human, because they were just like, oh my god, it's you, how are you, blah 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 blah, and it was just like, oh. And I just felt like I was just like, I just need like 5 minutes myself, please, for a minute, like so I don't know, nobody ever asked me, like they were just like, you're out of the cave now, get out of here, like. And it was of course like 5 in the morning, so there's no gas stations or anything. It was like it was my second adventure I had to have after the cave rescue. So, you know, those are just like good little courteous things to like think about as you're like, you know, afterwards. It's just stuff like I would never have thought about until I had to deal with it. So, yeah, it's good to have that experience, whether we like it or not, to be a little bit more empathetic and considerate. And like I said, yeah, I'll put my email if anybody wants to follow up.
Is there any other questions?
Peter Norris. Yeah. Yeah, back in the day when there weren't really any debriefings. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's rough. And yeah, they just did it. I get that. Yeah. And then Robin talks about a suicide prevention line, maintaining connection, rapport, and checking. Yeah. Don't be shy, but yeah, to ask about that. You know, I have been shy. I haven't really asked anybody about that, but definitely I found out years later from talking to some friends that they were really going through it a lot worse than what we knew at the time, you know. And yeah, it's hard to like understand that balance of like maintaining someone's dignity and like not talking about it until they want to bring it up. But you know, some people aren't really like I don't know that they'll ever bring it up if they're not given an invitation or a space to do it, you know. So sometimes by sharing your own stuff, it's like other people are like, oh yeah, I can relate to that, and they might need that more than you do. So that's I've been surprised to find those kind of things as well. And especially in the rescue training, now that I'm an instructor, I see people come in and they've, you know, they're in a training because they've been through something, and you know, they got slapped in the face by life, you know. So it's important to remember that not everybody's there just to be like, wow, rescues are fun, let's ride the ambulance, you know, because actually most people who are there are not feeling that way. So or at least in my experience, especially with the cavers. So yeah, that's a good call for sure. I was like, I feel like I'm like a little bit like lower energy than I was on the last one, because it's like later I'm like, I have like maybe less caffeine in my body, but I hope it wasn't too much of a downer. I know it's a hard topic, but
Yeah. So the person who it was their like second flood event, because you were trying to get them to come caving again. Did they keep caving?
Kind of. There were a couple more trips and tears, and we had to exit the cave a few times early, and they still do some caving, but it's definitely like it's much closer to the entrance. So I'm sure they're going through their own journey. But yeah, that was definitely like a bad day where I was like, that person, I was literally like that person's, you know, butler to help them, you know, through the cave and kind of introduce them to survey. And yeah, it was a really bad trip for them. So it's always like almost jinxing to like, you know, be like, totally, this is gonna be an easy trip, nothing bad's gonna happen, you know. I try not to say stuff like that anymore, because yeah, I mean, it's not like you invited, it's just, you know, it just happens. Stuff can happen anywhere, anytime. So it is funny though, like the media, like if you ever are in a rescue, like don't read the comments. I mean, I read the comments, but like you know, there's just, I mean, yeah, they're really bad. And yeah.
Yeah.
So Do yourself a favor and skip those. Those are
Yeah,
really
we find it
bad.
with the Thai cave rescue. Initially, we were trying not to say anything because like we have got nothing to do with it. But then we could see such bad information going into the media. We're like, oh my god! Like I guess we can do better than
Yes.
that. So we did start talking to them.
Yeah. I actually got kicked a media pitch. Yeah. Well, it's amazing too. Yeah, and because that one was so different because there's such an extended like they just needed anything. So I got kicked a media thing from somebody at NCRC that was they were just constantly being like, we want stories about floods, 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 floods. What can you tell us about floods and diving and floods and caves and diving? And so I ended up doing a little piece that somebody was like, here, like answer the like do this because they just keep asking, and so it is like these little bite-sized things. But it was weird in ours too because like somebody was trying to explain to the media that we had brought in like those little the little heaters, like the little sternos, and they're like, oh, so you can heat up the whole cave with that. And we're like, what do you even like? It's just like they'll ask questions, you're like, do you even understand a cave? Like it's not even, I can't even talk to you about this stuff. Like you think this is gonna, okay, never mind, like just keep it really simple, really simple. And they just, they just don't, I don't know, it's interesting how little like concept. I think it was very on display with the Thai rescue and stuff, but just wow, people really don't understand. And then of course they don't understand why you do it, and they of course think that no one should ever rescue you, and that you're really stupid, and you deserve to die for being so stupid. And just like, damn, like some comments are harsh, like some people out there, it's crazy. So it's but the cavers, I think we all understand, and some of us have had near misses in our day, so um we get it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, thanks so much. Like, I hope that you can do this presentation for more grottos and other groups around, because the more people, I mean, to your own capacity, of course.
Yeah.
But I mean, the more people can understand what sort of reactions people can have, and that they're all different, the more they can understand what might be happening to them, and understand that there's many people who may feel the same or might have had the same reactions. So that's really. And then if I could add for the Alberta and British Columbia people on the call. So in Alberta and BC, we do have critical incident stress management peer support that's available to us through the SAR community. So if we do ever have that kind of incident, we can do that debrief that's with trained people. And they're just a phone call away for us to call in that capacity. And then the other thing you mentioned was American caving accidents. And so a lot of people don't know that American caving accidents is all of North America. So Canada,
that's right.
Canada as well. So if we do have Canadian incidents, those can be reported in through ACA as well. And ACA is available on the NSS website to everybody. You don't need to be an NSS member. So you can download all the past issues. And there's a new issue coming out. I want to say it's either April or May.
Yes.
The next,
the link. And I think, they've switched over the editor, so that this one's, I think, going to be a really meaty issue with, like 2.5 years or something in it. I don't know. So
it's still the 2 years. It's just been delayed because
is it just
getting the first to her, and there's a few things that are just continuing to get it out. But finally, it'll be out. But hopefully, the next one will be like out shortly after that, because we'll have had another 2 years of data. So that'll be a good resource for people.
If I had to estimate, I'd say, I don't know, we're lucky at least if like 10% of the accidents are reported. I don't know what the number is, but I sure feel like I hear a lot more of them.
Like the big rescues, because they, people report those, but it's the near hits, right? Those kind of
I think are very informative.
Yeah.
Most informative sometimes. The ones that don't get reported, but it's like, I've had several people ask, what should I report? I'm like, if you learned anything, somebody else can learn something from that too. So, that's kind of the benchmark, I think, for it. If you feel, and if you want to, but and you can do anonymous reporting too, I believe.
Yep. Great.
But
Thanks. Anyways, that's my
I
comment.
appreciate you all having me. And again, like if there's anything else that you have questions about, just feel free to email me. And yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, Clinton, I'm seeing your links. I'm going to copy them and maybe send them in a separate document or something afterwards. Yeah, if there's no more questions, just thank you, Laura, so much for doing this.
Oh, anytime. Yeah, I'm glad, and if anybody ever wants to talk about anything or find me at a convention or anything else, I don't know how many times we'll cross paths, but maybe with some of you. So yeah, I'm happy to do it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, everyone else is being really quiet, but thank you very much. Yeah.
See ya.
Okay. Good night. Oh, Alan? Oh. It said Alan would like to speak, but
You're muted, Alan.
Yeah, I just unmuted myself. I think I hit the hand up by accident. So I don't know if the previous person who had the same comment did the same thing.
Okay.
Oh, okay. This is like bye. Good night. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.